Mariana, hey, congratulations for your new docu-series, Trafficked.
Thank you. How do I pronounce your name? Gig?
Gig, yes.
Gig. Okay, there's more people coming after you, but you're still special, Gig. I'm still happy to be here. I don't want you to not feel special.
Hey, you know what? I'm first in line, so I'm glad for that.
Yes, you are.
Hey, so tell me how you conceptualize Trafficked as a docu-series initially.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been reporting on these underworlds for over 15 years. And there was a moment that I realized, that these worlds are fascinating. And I think there's something that we don't realize is that while there's all these, there's televisions, there's entire TV stations and magazines and organizations tracking every up and down and twist and turn of the formal economy. The informal economy actually makes for almost half of the global economy. And I don't think most people know that. And there isn't a lot of reporting or analysis or access into these worlds. And there's a whole lot that we can learn from these worlds. The drug trade alone, for example, brings in over $300 billion a year. I mean, that's more than some of the biggest corporations in America. And that's more than some countries even. So I decided that this was a really sort of unique opportunity to enter these worlds, to get access to these criminal underworlds and to sort of understand how they operate and what we can take away and what we can learn from them.
You know, I've seen your previous work before, and you are very fascinated about these conflicts and crime. How did this trigger for you to be in this world in the first place?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. I decided I wanted to be a journalist when I was 12 years old. I used to watch the nightly news with my family every night in Portugal, and I used to watch the anchors on television, basically talking about the whole wide world. And I just thought they had so much knowledge. I had no idea they were reading from a teleprompter. And I just remember thinking, this is what I want to do. I want to have all this knowledge, and I want to know what's out there, and I want to memorize all these facts and all that. And so then I started applying to Columbia University's journalism school as soon as I graduated from school. And I didn't get in the first year. I didn't get in the second year. The third year, I flew to New York. I knocked on the dean's door. I introduced myself. And that year I was accepted. And I still thought that what I wanted to do was sort of nightly news reporting, breaking news kind of reporting. But a month into my program, or a few weeks into my program, 9/11 happened. And I was the only Portuguese journalist in Manhattan at the time. So I ended up doing the coverage for 9/11 to Portugal. And I realized very early on while covering 9/11 that actually the kind of reporting that I wanted to do was more in depth. I really wanted to contextualize things and understand why they were happening. So my first story as a freelance journalist was actually in Syria. I had moved to Syria to learn Arabic. And my first story as a freelance journalist was about the Syrian Mujahideen who were crossing into Iraq to fight against the Americans. And it was sort of the first vestiges of insurgency at the time. And I think I've always been drawn to, worlds that are darker worlds and that don't have, that there's no one really shining a light on them. And I think partly it's because the harder people tell me it is to get that access, the more I want it. I think that's something that's common for all of us journalists. Never to tell the journalist no, because that's when they'll never back up. And I think part of it is that, and part of it is also my curiosity. I've always been incredibly curious, and the less I know about something, the more I want to know about it.
I'm amazed because you're a journalist, I'm a journalist, and I have not left my house for the past 8 months, and I'm here in the safety of my own home. But
what? You know where I am?
No, I don't.
I'm in Culiacan, Sinaloa right now.
Oh, really? I'm like amazed. Like you put yourself in this danger. Aren't you ever scared in these situations? Because there seems like when you're watching the episodes, you look like you are scared, but yet you have this sense of bravery when it comes to this.
I would say that, yes, there are moments where I'm scared for sure, but I'd say that my curiosity always wins. In a battle between curiosity and fear, curiosity always wins. And I think there's a lot of plant security and safety planning that goes beforehand. to make sure that nothing happens, because no story is worth a life, obviously. But in these moments, I think the most important thing is that you trust the people that you're with, because at the end of the day, your life and your security is in their hands. So that is incredibly important. And part of trusting them is that you have to trust them, and therefore they have to trust you. So you can't show up and be all nervous or talk about, or show up with, security presence or in any way show them that you don't trust them, because that's the worst thing that you can do. So I think that's part of why, I might seem brave in these moments. It's partly because I'm trying to keep it cool and really have them feel that I trust them.
What was your closest call?
I've had a few. I've had a few. I mean, there was moments for Traffic, for example, where as we're going in to film with the gunmen, the sicarios for the Sinaloa cartel, we're going deep into the jungle and hiking with them, and they tell us, and they have their AK-47s and their weapons, and they tell us that, look, you're protected while you're with us, but if the Mexican Marines show up, there's going to be a firefight, and we can't protect you then, and you'll be caught in the middle of this firefight. And so just want you to be aware. And there was a moment of pause whether we should or should not do it. We decided to go ahead and continue with them. And then a few hours later, they have these walkie-talkies, and you can hear chatter all the time, so they know anyone who's entering the territory. And I started hearing that walkie-talkie get louder and louder, and then they turn to us, okay, this is it. This is the moment. The Marines are here. The helicopter is coming in our direction. And you'll have to watch the episode and see what happens next. But that was definitely a close call.
How important is it to protect their identities? And why would they want to even speak to you in the first place? Because they are part of the criminal underground.
Absolutely. Protecting their identities is, as journalists, protecting our sources is one of the most important things we have to do. And we promise them that. And, we take photos, they get masks, we take photos, we make sure that they see what they look like and that they're okay with that. There are very clear rules of engagement, of what we can and cannot film, what we can, to make sure that they're okay with sharing their lives and their, criminal operations. And I think they trust me for several reasons. I think that I come with empathy instead of judgment, and I think they can tell that. I think that they see that I'm willing to sit down and listen to them. I think part of it is ego that's driving them. Here they are, sort of the best people, the best in the world at what they do, and yet many times their families don't even know what they do. And so it's an opportunity for them to talk about what they're passionate about and what they're very good about with doing. And on the other hand, I also truly think that sometimes it's very important to them. These aren't the most stigmatized and stereotyped people in our societies. They're criminals, and we're giving them an opportunity to tell their stories. And they think that's important to show us that they're not bad people. They want to tell me why they entered this life. And again, we're giving them this opportunity. So I think part of it is that too.
None of them ever watched anything later and then disagree and try to come back to you again, do they?
No. So one thing's very important as journalists is that we keep our editorial independence. So we don't go back to them for content or anything, but we do always consult with the local journalists, for example, what we call fixers, to make sure that they think that security wise, that everything is as we promised, and that we're keeping things safe for themselves, for the fixer, the local journalist, who's ultimately the one that stays in the country. It's one thing we always think that the work that I do or my team does, that we're incredibly brave, but the real brave people in this kind of reporting are the local fixers, the local journalists, because we are the privileged ones that can leave the country and come back to the United States, while they are the ones that stay in the country. And if anything happens that goes, that reveals the place or the location, the identity of some of these people, ultimately, it's the local journalists that can pay for it. So it's something that we take very, very seriously.
Wow. Now, how much pre-planning is actually involved? Because you already came up with so many episodes for Trafficked, and I feel like this takes years. But you just spit them out like it's nothing. I mean, how much pre-planning is actually involved?
Months and sometimes years. One of the documentaries we did was about one of the episodes about fentanyl trafficking, and I've been tracking the opioid crisis since 2009. So a lot of the sources that we used, a lot of the access that we got was from reporting that I'd started doing back in 2009. So months and years, and even years sometimes, I would say. And yeah, that's the part that usually doesn't come on camera. But one thing we've tried to do with Trafficked is really sort of open the curtains with how journalists even get to these situations, the whole journey behind it. When I get denied access, what happens then? How do you get access to these worlds? I really showing sort of opening up the stage and what's happening behind the stage. And I think that makes it even more compelling and interesting.
Do you ever sympathize for them or even have the urge to go into business with them after doing all these years?
You know what? No, never. But you know what's funny is just 2 days ago, I'm filming a meth story here in Mexico. And one of the traffickers I was interviewing, after the end of the interview, I said, thank you so much for showing us, your world and talking about your life. I really appreciate it. And he said, no worries, anytime. And by the way, do you think you could take just a kilo of meth back to the United States? I said, sorry, that is obviously never going to happen. But it was actually the first time I was ever asked. I'd never been asked that question before. But yes, but I don't sympathize as much as I empathize. I do think it is important for us to try to understand their stories and to walk in their shoes a little bit, because only by understanding these worlds and the people that operate in them are we going to be able to change them and stop these trafficking networks from existing.
And one more thing, how do you choose your topics? Because some of the episodes I noticed was like on steroids and human trafficking, which is here in the United States, but it seems like it's not as dangerous as you go internationally. So how do you pick and choose which traffic topic to portray?
Yeah, it's usually just things that pique my curiosity. I've always been fascinated by steroids. I knew that it was growing, that more and more people, I started hearing that it wasn't just in gyms and it wasn't just in bodybuilders, but it was, regular people, suburban moms are starting to take steroids. So it's usually little snippets of information that I get. And then I have an incredible team of producers that I work with and directors who also pitch in ideas. And as long as it's not something that it's been overdone, as long as it's something that's incredibly challenging and difficult and impossible to get access to, then we know it's a traffic story.
Excellent.
But that is also impactful, I would say, that I'm also having an impact in the world.
I think you do. Now, one last thought. Are you ever going to be open to the idea of a narrative feature of your story on one of these days? Because it's how you actually do this. It's so enthralling and compelling. Like it's like watching a movie.
Oh, thank you. That's the best thing you could say. Absolutely. I'd be very, very open. Yes, definitely. I would love it. Of course. Yes. I think there's so many more stories that happen that we can't even talk about for our episodes, but that could make for, always reality is always more interesting than fiction and crazier than fiction. So yeah, so I think there's so much there. So if you have any ideas or contacts, let me know.
Well, I'll just check my underground contacts for us. Excellent, Mariana. Hey, congratulations once again for Trafficked. Can't wait till all the Nat Geo fans actually get to check it out.
You're so sweet. Thanks, Gig. Really appreciate it.
Hey.